Here we go. Figuring shit out. Podcast episode 92 of them things, my boy. Yeah, we in that jank. I'm King Arthur. Y'all know what time it is. Unify and thrive. Don't you forget it. Tell your people about it. Frank, what's going on with you over there, Brody?
Not much, man. Working on some things. I got Cyber Bunny's coming back, hopefully in a couple
Mm-hmm.
of weeks. I got some big things happening there. And as far as like Lucid Perspective, you need websites, graphics, videos, and other creative things. Hit up
All that.
lucidperspective.com. But outside of that, same old. What's going on with
All
you,
that.
bro?
All that. Yeah, you know, man. You know what time it is. Springtime, fall time, my time to shine. 2020 faces. You know, we outside. Come visit us. Uh, every festival near you, right? But
Facts.
today we got Miss Kaleema in the building, and we're gonna talk some good stuff. I'm sure. Uh, I follow her on Facebook. We don't interact that much, but I always see her posting and stuff like that, and always talk about her mission. So let's get this thing rolling, Miss Kaleema. Like we ask every guest, what is your figuring shit out moment? Either with your book or in life, or something that made you go, aha.
Well, I'll say with my book, my figuring stuff out moment was when I was on a vacation with my then husband, my son, and my nephew. And he woke up that morning with his suitcase packed and said he was leaving and going home and walked out. And we didn't see him again until I took him to court. That was my figuring things out moment.
God damn, that's
That's
a that's crazy. That's
Hey, I just seen Mr. Crab me when he got his head spinning. Like
Yeah.
I can
well,
imagine that was tough.
yeah.
You go ahead, Frank.
I was about to say, so what we don't have to get into details if you don't want, but like what did you figure out? Like I'm sure you got stories, you got anecdotes for us. Uh but what exactly did you figure out in that moment? You know what I
In
mean?
that moment, well, we got on this vacation, which was actually was our wedding anniversary vacation. And I had my son and my nephew, and we got there that Friday night. And Saturday morning, we're all in our pajamas except for him. And we wake up and he's fully dressed with his suitcase and he says, I'm leaving, I'm going home. And he left, he walked out. So it just was I didn't know what to think, because
Hmm.
we had been married 4 years at this point. We had never had an argument the whole entire marriage. And people think, oh, there must have been something going on. We never had an argument until that same week. We had an argument that week because, I had been at the hospital with my dad. I was taking care of him. And it was, you've been gone all day kind of thing, which was unusual because we never argued. And then also that week, I had turned down a job at, a well-known university. And I said, well, they're not offering enough, so I'm just going to turn it down. And he just yells like, how much money do you need anyway? So all in that week, things started to kind of uncrumble and like just fall apart. And it didn't make sense. Fast forwarding, it made sense in the end only because he had done it before. And it wasn't
Oh,
the first time that he had done this so-called disappearing act. And so, but of course, I don't know this at the time. So I'm just on this vacation and, I'm not going to go chasing someone down the highway. So we just finished our vacation. We went to the beach, we went go-kart riding, we did everything we were supposed to do. And when I get home, I'm thinking he's home because he said he was going home. I said, I'll figure it out, when I
hmm.
get there. But I get home and he's not there. It's like he was never there. He had packed up all of his things and he was just gone. Um, and so I ended up writing a formal complaint to my community, the Muslim community. And I wrote it as an indictment and I charged him
Right.
with abandonment and desertion. And I told him this is what I want because he was a, prominent person, so-called, in the community. He was one of the leaders that gave services and prayers. And so I wrote this indictment and charged him. And then I filed, in court. And
Hmm.
so it was just a very crazy time. Like I said, I was taking care of my dad. It was during COVID, and we had moved the family to Virginia to take my dad out of the nursing home. It was at that time where you had to talk to your loved ones through a window.
Hmm.
And my dad was 80
Oh, it's like COVID.
at
Yeah.
the time. And
Okay.
so I said, well, we can't, this is not going to do. And so he was living with us. So all of the, long story short, I ended up writing my book, Hidden in Plain Sight. It's a double entendre because it talks about how people have a whole hidden life. They have one persona they have for the public, that they are respectable,
Nice.
You know, nice, you know, members
Well
of the
off.
community. They're, you know, they're educated, you know, they have careers, they have families, they have
Mm-hmm.
friends, they have community, and then they live a whole different life. And so that's why the book is called Hidden in Plain Sight, because not only are they hiding in plain sight among the community, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Catholic, you know, their abuse is hidden in plain sight. Because people think if you don't have a black eye, a bloody nose, a busted lip, that you're okay. But they never consider the other forms of abuse, like mental and psychological abuse, as well as financial abuse. And so that is why the book is called Hidden in Plain Sight. But fast forward, I ended up, after I wrote that complaint, it kind of went viral. And I was offered an opportunity to write 7-week series of columns in the Muslim Journal about abandonment in the Muslim community. After that, to social media, I was getting, you know, emails and phone calls and messages from other women to say, hey, you only talked about Muslims. It happens to us too. And so that's when I didn't intend to write a book, but I actually wrote the book and interviewed women who are Muslim, Christian, and Catholic, Black, white, and Hispanic about the grooming process. By profession, I'm a policy analyst, and you know, and so I analyzed the policy and procedure of grooming, and I intentionally picked, because people think, oh, these must be people who are on the outskirts of community. You know, they're not employed or they're not grounded in the community. They don't have families. But these people in my book, they're all true stories. This is, you know, a book of nonfiction. They are grounded in community, psychiatrists, and you know, a Division I basketball coach, you know, educated with a PhD, you know, a high school principal, you know, people that you think are safe. You know, they look good on paper,
And they're
but
public figures too, it
and the
seems
public,
like.
and this is how they get away with it. But you really have to have nothing to lose, which was me, because you know, I said, I'm just going to expose the whole thing. And so every time we went to court, I would bring members of the Muslim community with me, you know, and they tried to close the courtroom. And I said, oh, well, if you don't like that, I'm just going to fill the courtroom, you know. And so because these people get away with it because, you know, they groom not only you, they groom your parents, your siblings, you know, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, the kids, the dog, the cat. They're grooming
It's a
everyone around you.
psychological operation.
Exactly. The only thing new about it is you. They're doing the same thing over and over again, but you're like the new piece of the puzzle, and you don't know that you're being groomed.
So that's a lot to unpack. Go ahead, Ken.
It is. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. So my first thought when she was saying that, you know, he went home and said he'll be there when you get there, or thinking he would be there when you get there.
But that's what
he was like, okay. And then when you get there, it's like, my first thought was premeditated, as in he had already thought this thing out. There was no trace of him existing in your home when you got back home, right?
Yes, in fact, the whole vacation had been planned, and I'm kind of bouncing around, but you know, in the end, there was evidence that he had planned his return before we even went on the trip. You know, so
so I want to jump back to like that week. You said you was married for 4 years. Didn't really have arguments except for like that last week. And you said your father was sick, so you was visiting him, and he had a problem with that. And then he had a problem with you turning down a job or looking for a job.
I was turning down a job because I was in the federal government. I was retiring during COVID because I worked at Health and Human Services, and we were swamped. But I'm taking care of my father in the home, and he's terminally ill. So I said, well, I'm just going to go ahead and retire, which was our plan. It wasn't that I just, you know, arbitrarily decided to do it, that I would retire and, you know, take care of my dad to end of life because he was terminally ill. And then I would go back to work. And so in the meantime, I got an offer from Old Dominion University, and I was like, you know, they're not, you know, offering enough. And so I'm just going to let that slide, let that go, you know. And he just kind of blew up, which was out of the ordinary. And he's like, you know, how much money do you need anyway? You know, he's trying to make me feel bad and saying, well, you know, I didn't know, when it comes to narcissists, you never know in the whole relationship, you're in competition with them, but you don't know it because you're thinking you're in a loving relationship. And when I do well, you do well. And when you do well, I do well. But with a narcissist, they're always in competition with you. And I had no idea that this was a competition because he, you know, he had multiple degrees. And I have more than one degree as well, but he had like 2 times the degrees I have. So I didn't understand that we were in a competition. So when
he was established academically,
yes.
professionally, financially. Now, and I know there's guys out there that have to be, I don't want to say alpha, but breadwinner and in control and all that stuff. So did you think that, or when that happened, did you feel like he was a controlling person in that way, and then maybe he just finally revealed himself towards the end? Or were there signs that you maybe missed during the 4 years?
It still didn't connect for me because you have to, like I said, I was taking care of my father in the home, and it was literally around the clock because he had cancer and he had a partial amputation. So I'm really being a nurse in the home. And so when these weird things are happening, I'm kind of dismissing it to, it's just the stress. We're in COVID lockdown. I have my dad here. I'm working full time. I'm working with my dad around the clock. My sister and I have opened a business. I have a teenage son. And so I'm thinking, during this week, all this stuff kept kind of popping off. And I'm thinking, we just need to get to this vacation because the vacation was at the end of the week. And I'm thinking once we get on this vacation and we can actually relax, we had not been on vacation the whole time during COVID. So in my mind, I'm kind of dismissing these odd behaviors. I'm a little, heated because I'm like, because we never argued and now he's acting crazy. But I'm thinking we just need to get to this vacation. Things can settle down. We just all need a break from being trapped, in the house. And so I just kind of dismissed that. So that's like on a Wednesday.
That's crazy.
And so then on Friday, we leave for the vacation. And then Saturday, as I said, things rolled out, the way they did.
That is tough.
That is tough.
My thing is, go ahead, King, my fault.
But no, I was just saying, like, I just keep, every time she's mentioning what's going on, it's like premeditated, kind of like, when from a male's perspective, right, when a woman wants to say something, wants to do something, or wants to end something, right, she'll kind of be irritated at every single thing, right? And that's kind of sounding like what he was just doing. Like, it didn't really matter what was happening. It was going to make him blow up, right? So I want to talk about what is grooming, right? What is grooming? Because like you said, you use the word a lot. Other people do it all the time, right? And then, like you said, the whole 4 years that you guys were together, he was a whole nother person until this last minute amount of time, a whole nother individual came. He was like, well, what's going on here, right? So talk about what's grooming. How can you pinpoint it too, right?
Right. Now, the grooming process that narcissists use is not unlike the grooming process that pedophiles use, and like I said, they're going to kind of circle around you. They've already come in contact with you before they started grooming you. They've come in contact with people around you. And they're kind of circling in on you, right? And so when you think about in the relationship, like in a romantic relationship, some of the grooming things look like what you would expect, being overly attentive, gifts, accolades, being, kind and helpful to your family, but it's kind of everything is on like 10. They're going to rush you through the relationship because for it to work, it has to be a quick process. And this is where the grooming process is easier done in religious communities, because in religious communities, you're not looking at a long engagement where you're going to, kind of live together and all this type of thing. Your whole purpose of dating is to get married. And so this grooming process works very well, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Catholic, Jewish, whatever the case may be. This is going to be the best place to groom people in this way. Right. And so the grooming process is going to look like something very quick and fast. And you're going to be like the best thing ever. And they're going to talk about the previous situation as if, this was not a good match. It was horrible, but we're perfect for each other. Everything you want, they want. What you like, they like. What you hate, they hate.
Agreeable.
Whatever aspirations are. In my book, one of the ladies wanted a yoga studio. So her groomer, who actually was a psychiatrist, he says, oh yeah, I have a whole business plan for your yoga studio. I wanted to open a bookstore, or in my case, I was a single mom, I was divorced. And so I'm going to fill this gap for you to be a role model and to be a support system, for your son. In another situation, the lady was groomed and he was constantly very overly attentive. And she thought maybe he's just that into me. But when he gets her to they have this grandiose wedding that he insists on, and they have the wedding, and the next day they get on the plane to go on a honeymoon, and he started abusing her on the plane on the way to the honeymoon. Then he abandoned her 2 times on the honeymoon. Then they come back and he abandons her again. And so it's just it's a psychosis. It's not, you can't even really say it's a sickness, because the sickness affects the person too. But it's a psychosis because the detriment is to the other person. It's an intentional, like you said, it's an intentional, emotionally and psychologically abusive web that
Yeah, it seems very intentional, very methodical, very premeditated. I would even say evil. It is now 2023, going on 2024. Why don't you have a VPN? Only for a limited time. Go to PIAVPN.com/cyberbunny. You could get 83% off the PIA VPN. What is a VPN? VPN is basically software that's used to hide an end user information such as IP address, location, private data they may be transferring over the internet, identifiable information such as their devices they're using from being spied on, from hackers, governments, internet service providers, anybody out there who wants to steal your data for their own personal gain. That's basically what a VPN does. If you want to take advantage of this discount, go to PIAVPN.com/cyberbunny. Go there now, sign up, tell them I sent you, get your software, get it installed on your laptops, on your mobile phones, on your tablets, any device that connects to the internet, get it installed on there. Get protected, go now. So let's talk about, like, if they're so clever, right? If they're so charming, I guess, if you want to describe it that way, what are some of the red flags after the fact? So, for instance, this what you were just talking about, we abused her on a plane and he abandoned her on honeymoon. Can you not at that point, those red flags, just be like, all right, I'm out, like cut it off? Or
you can.
is it too far gone? Or, like, most people, I guess at that point, they feel stuck. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, in her case, it came out immediately. And so that marriage didn't last a year because he immediately showed himself. In some cases, like in my case, it wasn't until, like, I was really, because there's 3 stages. There's the love bombing, the spirit breaking stage, and then the abandonment stage. So the love bombing is the grooming stage. And so for me, I was in the love bombing grooming stage for 3 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks. And then 1 week I went into the meaning and spirit breaking, and then the abandonment. But one of the ladies in my book, she was in a 9-year relationship, and her husband groomed her. She just wanted to have a good Catholic marriage, but she was being groomed the whole time. From the time they were, she graduated from graduate school, her parents gave her a car. He goes with her and he picks the car he wants, right?
To buy for her?
In the boundaries, right? With her money, he picks the car he wants, but he's testing the boundaries. Long story short, they get all the way to the end, and now he's grooming her to force her to have intimate relations with other people, to bring other people into the marriage. And so when I interviewed her, I asked her, like, how did you come to this, I said, swinging lifestyle, aging myself. And she said, that was never my lifestyle. He had groomed her into that. He would groom her by intimidating her. He would groom her by, threatening to tell her parents things, because what happened is, once he groomed her into going into, like, adult shops, which she didn't want to do. So every time he would get her to do something, now he can hold it over her head. So now if you don't do the next thing, I'm going to tell your parents you're doing this. I'm going to show your family that you're doing this. So she's on this hook, and she just keeps getting deeper and deeper into this hook where he's constantly threatening to expose her over the things that he groomed her into doing. He would do things like drive down a dark road and speed and turn the lights out, things to just kind of keep her kind of terrified of not only that, but also of terrified of him telling her family some of the things that he had convinced her to do.
That's crazy. It just makes you want to stay locked up in the house. That's king. That's why I don't go nowhere.
Yeah,
he always trying to get me to come outside.
When you look at Dateline and you see people falling off the ships and going on vacations and somebody doesn't come back, it's not an accident. It's not.
Just to disclaim people, like, there are good people in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to. These are
more
I don't know
than the bad action.
Yes, I don't know statistics.
Yeah.
We don't
normal.
want people to watch this and be like, "Oh my God, I gotta stay in my house locked up forever." It is very scary stuff.
Yeah.
Um, are there signs? Okay, let's say, are there pre-grooming signs? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there a way to feel people or vet people before you get to that point
Oh,
to
yes.
detect a narcissist
I would
or
say
ego crazy person?
yes. I would say if you're entering into, and people enter into relationships in different ways. So some people, like I said, if you're in a religious community, you might have the intent of getting married initially. If you're not, you may have the intent of dating initially. But at any rate, you really should be doing background checks on people. And,
I like that.
because after the fact, all of us found out things that were right there.
Hmm.
Right. But women in particular are taught to be polite, right?
Hmm.
We don't want to offend people. We don't want to be intrusive. We don't want to, what do you call it? We don't want to nag and ask a lot of questions. And so we're going to be polite. And so even in my case, I asked all the right questions, right? But I didn't follow up and I didn't ask for receipts and proof of what was being told to me because the person had established themselves in the community. So even the people I asked about the person, they were only repeating what they thought to be true from that person.
Hmm.
From their public perception.
Hmm?
From the public perception that person was given off.
Exactly. So all of my safe spaces had already been compromised before I even come into the picture. And it became clear that this was a situation where I was being targeted even long before I even met the person because they knew people around me and they were kind of circling in. So by the time they got to me, all of my defenses, my people are down.
Disarmed.
Right.
Disarm, engaged. Now that's crazy. This sound like well, what's that show? I don't know if y'all seen it. You on Netflix.
Yes.
Like when he sees somebody in a
Yes.
store, and then you watch the show. It is actually all talking about all this stuff, like the entire first season.
Right.
But yeah, no, I like the idea of background checks. I think that's
absolutely. But
And
also, as a
asking them
man in me, right? Sorry, go ahead.
And asking them to verify. Let me say, one lady was talking to me about she couldn't figure out why her husband's father kept calling about the house. Well, guess what? It wasn't his house. They were living in the father's house. So if someone tells you, "Oh, I own this house," you need to see the deed to the house. If someone says, "I was divorced," you need to see divorce papers.
Yeah.
Okay? Because my life became like a bad Lifetime movie. I'm in the garage, digging stuff out that was left behind and finding things that just don't add up now. Right. And so you have to ask people and ask the hard questions because if you know what, the truth welcomes questions and a lie does not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's a bar.
And so if you push and ask those questions and they push back, then you just need to be out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thank you,
I think that could be a red flag too. Like, when you're in the talking stage or you're trying to get to know a person, that the whole point of those interaction is to get to know that person. Right? You would think. So if somebody's getting irate or seem bothered by certain things, that could be a flag. You know what I mean?
But the well-groomed narc has an answer for everything. They have an answer that has just enough truth in it to be plausible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the person tells you, well, this person was helping me through my grief. We became close. We got married. We were friends. We decided we were better off friends, and we decided this is not going to work, and so we got divorced. That sounds plausible. People go through that. They go through grief, and they meet someone who's helping them through the grief, or a close friend, and now they become closer. They get married. But in the end, no, that's not what happened. You abandoned this person, and they found, my engagement ring in the drawer.
Mm.
You see, and so some of the stuff will it will be enough of a truth in there to make it believable, right?
Plausible, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's tough, right, Frank? So I'm thinking that the well-groomed narc, right? I'm going to use your phrase. He doesn't have any like true friends, and if you do, they're kind of in the same boat as he is in, right? Because I was thinking, like when you were talking, I was like, I don't even participate or hang with guys who are married and commit adultery on their wives, because I always think like, if you're going to cheat on your wife, what are you going to do to me? Right? I'm nobody. this is your person you're supposed to spend your building your life with, right? So, and also, I don't want to hang with a guy who is, being abusive to women or taking advantage of women or doing things that is not immorally aligned with me, right? So, like you said, the well-groomed narc, he clearly doesn't have any true friends, and if he does, they're in the same line or the same ilk as he is, right?
Exactly. Someone had asked me, how does someone hide in plain sight? And I said, well, it's very easy if you're a part of a group or a religious community, because all I have to do is make sure I'm not where I know they're going to be. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a part of a tight-knit religious community, regardless of that community, I know they're not going to be over here at, the strip club. So he can hide in plain sight there, because he's not, and if he runs into someone there, guess what? Y'all all in here together. No one's going to report, themselves like, oh yeah, I saw this person. Right. We were over here hanging out in this place where we shouldn't be, based on the persona that we're giving, and so that's how they hide, in plain sight,
So I have a question. I got a quick question about, so I guess the abandonment stage, you said that's like the last stage. What advantage or benefit do they have to abandon if they, so to speak, they're relinquishing control of you, right? So like if they leave and they abandon, then does that mean they quit, or were they using that as another form of control, or like how does that factor into benefactors for them?
Right. It's another form of control and abuse. Usually they're going to abandon when their mask clips off. When you see behind the mask, like in my case, you just kind of, now I'm seeing that you're not who you say you are. Now they're going to abandon. They're going to run, because now the jig is up. Or they will abandon as another form of abuse. If you were not compliant, if you were not being amenable and going along with whatever it is they want you to do, the abandonment is a form of abuse. And they may circle around and come back and abandon multiple times if they feel they can get away with it. Right. And so in one case, I was talking to a lady just the day before yesterday. In her situation, he abandoned and he left behind his journal, his personal journal. Right. So all this stuff in the journal is talking about how, 2 weeks into the marriage, he knew that she was wrong for him, and it's degrading her. And I told her, now, this journal is not real. You have to understand that. He left, no one leaves behind his personal journal. I said, he left this journal just to torture you more, even while he's gone, just to continue to abuse you, even when he's out of sight. So now this is all in her head, and she's reading this journal that, I'm like, this is not a real journal. It's more abuse that's left behind to continue the cycle. And they reel them back in and push them back out, reel them in and push them back out.
How do people got the time for this? It just seems exhausting to me just hearing about this. I know it's exhausting being put through it, but at the same time, it's like the time and energy to do all this stuff is like, I know you got to be a special person. You got to be a special type of person.
That's a good way to put it, special. Yeah. And it's just really something that stems from their own abuse, and not giving them an excuse, because they're still horrible people. Because even if you suffered abuse, it doesn't give you the right to abuse others.
Never, right? That's
and
correct.
Typically, you will find that maybe they experienced abandonment in their childhood, or maybe they were the overindulged child. And so, in my book, I do a lot of research about the psychological effects of abandonment, how it develops, how the narcissism develops. So it's not just my opinions. I did actual research in the book, and then I had a battery of interviews with women, and I connected all the dots to say, these are the 9 red flags that we need to be aware of, men and women. And so it is a psychological, it's a personality disorder. When you think about the narcissist at the high, it's on a spectrum, right? At the high end of the spectrum is a serial killer. At their very root is narcissism. That's why they feel that they can take you, kidnap you, dismember you, do whatever they want to do to you, because this is the very height of narcissism. And at the very low end of narcissism is the overindulged person who feels like only I matter, your feelings don't matter, I can do what I want to do. So it's really on a spectrum, and it's a personality disorder that is very dangerous, because the malignant narcissist will kill you. And I remember when I was in therapy, I said, and I was in therapy for like 2 whole years. When I was in therapy, I told the therapist, I said, well, I guess I should be happy I didn't wake up with a pillow over my face. And she looked at me, she said, this happens. She said, everything that happened to you is what happens when the family is that doesn't come back, but you came back. So don't take it lightly, and so that was one of the things that made me want to write the book, because as bad as my situation was, I was talking to women who had situations that were far worse. And so I wanted to compile all these stories to help other women and men, because if men have daughters and sisters and mothers and aunts and play cousins or whatever, you want to protect them
No, that's a
from this
bar.
type of abuse.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because like when you're talking about this, I'm thinking about, like, I got two sisters, I got a mom, I got family members, and it's almost like, where are the men in these women's lives? Like, I know you said they target and they become familiar with the family and all that, but the men in those women's lives, you feel like you would think that, I don't know, they will see red flags or like have their, what's it called, suspicions or whatever. But like, I just don't. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody's situation, but it's almost like there are evil men, but then there's also good men. And I think
Yes.
a lot of the good, positive alpha males need to step up and take control of certain situations also. I don't know specifically about your situation, but where are the men that would protect their sisters or their cousins or their,
Frank, I'm gonna
aunts?
I'm gonna push back a little bit, Frank, because I'm sure you heard the story of the brother who tried to protect his sister from abusive guy and did something to the abuser, right? And she goes out and goes and get another type of fella the same type of way, right? Or
Oh, okay.
you know what I'm talking about? Or the woman is more like, hey, I got this. Let me handle my life. This is my life. Let me handle it. And then the one who was trying to protect her is being ostracized or pushed out.
Yeah, it can
But
happen.
Well,
so that's go ahead.
that happens more so with people who are in like a physically abusive relationship, and a lot of these situations don't lead to physical abuse. It's more of mental and emotional abuse. And so this person, like I said, a well-groomed narc can groom people around. For instance, they're going to befriend the men in the family, and they're going to confide in them, fake confessions, and they're going to build a bond with them, right? And so it kind of breaks the defenses down, because they don't immediately target the person. They befriend the people around them. Even in one of the cases in my book, he showed up at her mother's funeral, but no one knew why he was there and no one paid any attention to him. Now, fast forward 2 years later, they're like, why was he at that funeral? When everything kind of falls out, like, yeah, I remember him being there, but why was he there? He wasn't a part of the family at this time. And so when you think about, well, why didn't the men protect? It's really a very intricate process that it's different if your sister or your mother comes home with a black eye, you're going to immediately jump in and
Yeah,
protect.
no, that's not
But if
that's not
you
flying.
don't know that the person is being psychologically groomed and becoming dependent on that person, you can't see it. So by the time you know it, you're 2-3 years in, because it's not visible on the person, right? So it's a different type of process. And so even though the men around may be well-meaning, if they're not well-versed in this psychological manipulation and abuse, then they may not see it either, to their defense.
Right.
Hi, I'm King Arthur, founder of Novel Views Tech, where we prepare children aged 10 to 17 for a future shaped by advanced technology. Our curriculum dives into fields like robotics, nanotechnology, quantum computing, and more. But what really brings learning to life are our bi-monthly Exploring the Future of Technology webinars, hosted by industry experts. These webinars aren't just lectures, they're interactive discussions that connect your child to the pulse of the tech world, creating a learning experience that goes beyond the classroom. We offer a money-back guarantee to ensure you're completely satisfied. Equip your child with the skills to not just adapt, but to innovate and lead in the future. Join us at Novel Views Tech, and let's build their future today.
No, that's fair, and that makes sense. And so this is where when we talk about, so here at Figure Shit Out podcast, right? When we talk about problems, sometimes we try to maybe throw ideas for like solutions. Like
Mm-hmm.
what would okay, I guess you said narcissist people, they become that way because they are abused themselves as children and
People hurt
trauma.
people.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess the obvious answer, the obvious way to lessen this impact or lessen these type of people is to be nice or just not be abusive. But like where can you get to the root of, because people they have kids, maybe they're not supposed to have kids, they abuse them, they grow up, they do the cycles over and over. But like, how do you get to the root where most of the people in the world are just nice, loving, caring people and not psychopaths, serial killers?
They were trying to figure it out since day one, Frank.
We would never. We won't get to that, and not only because sometimes the person is narcissistic because of their upbringing, but sometimes they did a study and it showed like the frontal cortex of the brain, and this is the portion of the brain that manages impulse control, it manages risk assessment, it manages how you deal with people like that, and anger and aggression. And they did a study on people who have been officially diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and they found that the frontal cortex of their brain is underdeveloped and is shrunken. They also found that people who experience long-term psychological abuse, that it creates atrophy and shrinkage of the brain. So these are beyond, we can just be nice and everyone, we're going to sing Kumbaya. Sometimes it is a chemical imbalance and chemical damage that has to be repaired through therapy. And so I did find a lot with people, talking to people, they're like, oh, you just have to read and pray and read your Quran, your Bible, your Torah, and pray. Well, yeah, you can do that. But it's just like if you walk out into the street and get hit by a car and break a leg, you can read and pray all you want. Their leg is still broken. You're going to have medical help. You're going to have to scoop up. They're going to take you to the hospital. They're going to set your leg, right? But if you don't get mental, physical, spiritual, and psychological healing, you're going to be right back out on the street again, walking across the street, get hit by the narc bus again. It's full of clowns and flying monkeys. And now you're right back where you started because you haven't experienced full healing. And so it's detrimental to people to say, oh, just forgive and you're going to feel better. No, we're not doing that. You can't go around forgiving people who abuse you before you even forgive yourself for not seeing the signs, and before you heal yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Because if we miss any of those steps of the healing, we're going to be right back where we started. We're not attracting these people because we're bad people. We're attracting these people because we haven't healed. And if we healed, we have knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and we can see it coming. Like, you can get me once, but you're not going to get me again. Healed, right? It doesn't mean that bad things won't happen to us, because that's just the way the world is. But, as my dad would say, we'll make new mistakes, not those same old mistakes.
Hey, that's a lot. Forgiving yourself is a major key. Like, and that's not even with relationships, right? That's kind of with everything. Like, you're gonna, oh my gosh, you're gonna crash the car, you're gonna break your cell phone, you're gonna spend the money where you were supposed to, right? You're gonna, kiss the wrong girl, right? Forgiving yourself is a major key. And talk about how'd you end up forgiving yourself, right, in your situation, because not everybody understands that without that part, there is no moving forward properly.
No moving forward. It was a lot. Actually, surprisingly, had I not spoken to one of the previous wives, I never would have been able to get to that point, because she really helped me to understand this is not you. This is what the person does. It's just a repeated process over and over again. So I was very fortunate that little piece of the puzzle was filled for me, but most people don't have that. And so they're going to have to just work on forgiving themselves. And, I was beating myself up because I felt like all the signs were there after the fact. Well, that's hindsight, right? And also because, I had my son, who was collateral damage. And I beat myself up for a long time. Even now, sometimes I think about it and it's just gut wrenching, because my job is to protect him. Right. And so, I just had to work, through, with therapy on understanding that there was nothing I could have done to prevent what the slippery slope that I was on, other than not having met him in the first place. Because when you come across a well-groomed narc, now you're getting snared into this trap until you're kicked off a cliff. And so
Right.
without having the knowledge of the grooming process, you're just down this slippery slope and you don't even know it.
Right.
So I had to really come to the understanding that, I didn't have the power to do that. And guess what? Had that not happened, I would never have written a book. I've been writing federal policies for 23 years, and I always said I was going to write a book. But, now I had something to really dig into and write. So I really had to say, I went through a whole lot of trauma. In 2 years, it was just 2 years of trauma, because not only this, it was financial trauma behind it, right? Emotional and spiritual, financial. And now it's going into physical trauma because you become sick from it,
Right.
right? But in the end, I had to say, you know what? Had I not gone through all of that, I would not be able to help other people avoid going through it. I just had to look at it that way.
There
Like
you
I just
go.
had to take one for the team.
That's
It was a
that's
big
the solution. Yeah, helping other like people. You go through things and then help others see or see the warning signs and help others. I think that's so. When I was asking before about like how to stop this because we want solutions, I think that's it right there. I think you hit it on the nose. Like some people, unfortunately, have to go through certain things to hopefully help others. And there's virtue in that. You know what I mean? So I
right.
think that's super dope.
And that's called post-traumatic growth, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have recovering from trauma and restoring your life. It's called resilience. But when you take that trauma or that traumatic experience, learning experience, and you help others, it's called post-traumatic growth. And that's something that, we can all aspire, to experience, even if it's just in a small way or a big way. It doesn't have to be a book. If you play chess or if you box or if you run and you cycle or you paint or you sing, you can take that experience and create a positive experience for other people and elevate yourself to the level of post-traumatic growth.
No, that's dope. Earlier you mentioned, I think it was 8 steps or 8 warning signs. Can you touch on those, or do you want people to get the book for that? Is that too much information? We
I
don't.
talked about some of them, the 9
Okay.
flags. They're definitely some of the things I talked about, like people who want to move you into a relationship too fast, using terms of endearment too soon to kind of connect you to say, oh yeah, we have all the same wants and likes and needs and aspirations and fears, so we're soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, it will break your barriers down to think, oh, we're all on the same page. But you don't ask them to quantify what they, mean. Like, oh yeah, I want to do XYZ. Well, you ask their friends or their family when you're around them, well, how do you feel about, so-and-so saying he wants to start his own business? And they're looking around crazy, like, we don't know what you're talking about. You need to make sure you quantify those things, because the narc is like an undercooked Thanksgiving turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And when they cut into it at the dinner table and they see the pink at the bone, nobody wants to say anything because no one wants to ruin Thanksgiving dinner, right? And they want to be quiet. And so you really have to be willing to say the turkey is not done. We're going to throw this mess out and we're going to order Pizza Hut. You have to be willing to say, I see something wrong here, because people don't want to ruin your dreams. If you bring a lady forward to your family, you say, this is my soulmate, the love of my life. I finally found what I need in this life to be successful. They're going to be reluctant to say anything unless they see some blatant things. They're going to be reluctant to say, I don't want to call out the pink on the bone of the Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And that seems overbearing. That language can seem overbearing, but you never know. There could be people out there that actually talk like that and feel like that and have good intentions. So it's kind of hard. Like I honestly, you probably don't want to be paranoid all the time, but then you're not sure if this person's being legit or not. So it's I don't know, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because there could be people out there been waiting for that to hear that their whole life. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's the only way to distinguish between them is you're going to have to be a little rude. You're going to have to ask the hard questions. You're going to have to skin some people up a little bit. But guess what? The truth welcomes questions. Someone who's sincere and said, you're my soulmate, and you ask them all these battery of questions like, why are you telling me this? Can you quantify this? How do you know I'm your soulmate? Show me where you started working on this XYZ that you said we're going to do together. Show me what you've done so far. The person who's telling the truth is going to be willing to say, yeah, I was trying to start this business. I did this, but I had to pivot. I had to do that, but I'm going to, and they'll roll it out for you.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, a person
that
who's
sounds
not
real fair. Yeah.
why are you asking me all these questions? You don't believe me, you don't trust me, and then they turn it on you. What's wrong with you? You don't trust me. You don't love me.
That just sounds evil. It sounds bad just hearing it.
And so I want to ask you. We got couple more questions for you. But this one is like, the well-groomed narc, will they possess or exhibit all 9 symptoms of all 9 red flags, or will it be just some of the traits?
Well, some people have narcissistic tendencies, but they may not be like
Evil.
diagnosable as having narcissistic personality disorder. And I talk about that in detail in the book, but I won't bore you with that here. But they will have multiple red flags. Now, one red flag is something you may say, let me just dig into this and see what this situation, what this issue is, right? Because some of those red flags, like moving too fast, or being too affectionate, or being too present, or wanting to spend all the time together. These are things that could happen if a person
really rock with you.
They move. That's how they move. So the narc will have some of these red flags, but maybe not all of them. But if you see some of them, you have to really just kind of dig in and ask the questions. Especially if they've been married multiple times, if they're really down in the previous spouse, like they had nothing to do with the breakup of the previous relationship or the previous marriage. It was all on the other person. This is a huge red flag, because we all come with baggage. We all contribute. Even in my case, I was the victim, but I contributed to it by not really being my own advocate and not knowing and educating myself, and just letting, okay, we have the same religious beliefs and we have the same wants and needs. And I'm just kind of like asking people, and they're saying, okay, but I am responsible to be my own advocate. I should have said, I need to talk to your previous wife. But I didn't know to do that.
He would have been like, nah, you don't need to talk to her.
And that's, in this case, now, in this day and time, if I can't talk to her, we can't talk. Or someone else can talk to her, because sometimes it could get messy, and the person may make up stuff, and they may just be messy, right?
Right. They can be jealous. Yeah. No, that's
right.
True.
And so it doesn't mean you want to know. And that's what one of the ladies asked me. Well, what would I be asking her? You don't want to know who shot John. You don't want to know all the details, the dirty details of their marriage. What you really want to know is, how did he leave? How did she leave? That's all you need to know. How did this person leave this relationship? Did they leave in a respectful way? Did he leave and take care of the children when he left? Or if she left and the children with him, did she leave? And how did they leave? You don't need to know all the details, because it's going to be messy, because if it wasn't messy, they would still be there. But what you want to know is, how did they leave? Because the narc would never leave the person in a good place. They would intentionally pour salt in the wound. They would drive the nail. They would do something very humiliating. They would be very dismissive. They will degrade the person while they're leaving. They will always do that. And the person will hardly ever know it's going to happen. The lady I was talking to the other day, her husband did the same thing. We're going on this cabin trip. He's making $300,000 a year. He's an attorney, and they're going to go on this trip. And guess what happens? They don't go on the trip. He disappears. Right? But you want to know, how did they leave? You can just ask one question. And if they don't want you to talk to the spouse or the previous, you can let somebody else talk to them. Especially if you're going to get married. Like, you can't pass that question up.
And then on background checks, I like that idea. Yeah. I don't know, for some reason that I rock with that.
Because even if the person doesn't, they don't have criminal records, they will have some stuff that doesn't connect. And that's what I learned. There's no criminal record here, but guess what? Some of these dates and these things in these places where you're moving and how you were living, and you're over here and you're married over here, but you got a whole apartment over there, and someone is on this lease that the name doesn't register, something is going to be a disconnect. And a private investigator is cheap.
That's why I couldn't do it. I got the cert, and I was licensed to be a PI, and I did for a little bit, but the money wasn't good. That's why I left. So and I wasn't that nosy. I personally didn't care about people that much to dive into their lives, but that's me. But no, it is cheap.
It's when you think about, when I found out how cheap it is to have a private detective, then I was just like, this is crazy. I don't see why everyone doesn't do it. And if someone has a problem with it, then you already know it's an issue here. Just put the cards out on the table and let them fall where they may. But it's very cheap to get a private investigator. Just not necessarily to follow them around. That's cheap too. But just to run the paperwork.
Yeah, paperwork. The paper trail part is easy.
Yeah.
There's websites, there's people you can ask. I got connections, but yeah, no, the PI stuff, it was interesting for a while, but I had to let it go because I got my own life to live.
Um, that's wild. Like I never, and you don't think about hearing about this stuff in movies, right, or in books,
Yeah.
right? Running to people who are well groomed narcs and grooming and love bombing. I guess maybe because I'm a quote unquote normal person, right? Or we usually think about these things happening to women and not to men. So is that something that men have to deal with, love bombing and the being groomed by the women?
I
Is that
think so.
something men have to deal with or look out for?
Yes, and someone had asked me like, why did I only talk about women in my book? But I couldn't cover men and women in one book. That would be too much. But also because the psychologists and psychiatrists in the field, they all agree that more men are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And when you think about, when we talk about the spectrum with the serial killer, you don't find too many female serial killers, right? But
Never heard
on
of
the lower
one.
end, you will find more some narcissistic women, but by and large, more men are diagnosed with NPD because of the very makeup of men. It's something good in you that needs to be there, but when it goes to excess and extreme, like a man needs to be able to physically protect his family, but if he is just overly aggressive for no apparent reason, now it's a problem, right? So all of these characteristics that the narc has, are good things if they are contained and used in a positive way. But when it becomes excessive and without regard and empathy, that's another thing. The narc has no empathy in that frontal cortex. When it's used without regard and empathy for others, now it's going over to the realm of narcissism.
Are you looking for a media agency that covers all the creative tasks that make a business successful? Lucid Perspective produces elegant, high-resolution graphics and logos, high definition and 4K video, complete with treatment concepts and innovative editing. Lucid Perspective provides photography services such as fashion, advertisements, product or service, and aerial photography. We also help businesses build their brands from the ground up with complete campaigns that will make your business attractive to your target audience. We can bring your brand to the masses with our effective and strategic marketing campaigns to include sales funnels, eye-catching advertisements, breakthrough digital marketing through social media, and other digital avenues. Visit lucidperspective.com today. No, that's huge. And empathy is huge because without empathy, you, like you said, you only care about yourself. You have no remorse, you have no consideration for anyone else. It's almost like you live in the world by yourself, and then everybody else is a toy or a plaything or just an object. And whatever you want goes, and whatever anybody else got going on doesn't matter. And I think I feel like serial killers, like on the extreme side, I mean, the things they do, they can't care about nobody. To do stuff like that, to just murk motherfuckers consecutively, hide bodies and shit, like you gotta be some kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm using colorful language, but
yeah. But
Yes, you are,
think
right?
about people going on vacations and falling off of cruise ships. They don't come back from the hiking trip. They don't come back. Watch Dateline. Watch
yeah,
Dateline. You see this is happening
Daylight, wow.
every day.
there was the Dominican Republic had some issues with drinks. I don't know if that was the couples or like there was something going on a couple years back with people going to DR and then getting poisoned or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think that was in relation to that. However, I just saw another case where the couple went on a honeymoon on the cruise and he fell off. She said that they got drunk, they were, but that's in the end, that's not what happened. And this man who was a nuclear physicist, and he killed his wife, and they found out when he tried, it was set up to look like suicide, but then they found out his previous wife had died. Then they started investigating and found out he was not a nuclear physicist. He had this job. He had never gone to school. He was not a doctor. And then it all kind of unraveled, and they found out he had killed 3 of his wives. And he's just moving around the community, as a respected person in the community, so, but if you watch Dateline and these shows, these crime and detective real life shows, you would see this happens all the time, like every day. Like you would be afraid to even go out, but you just have to live your life.
And that's kind of crazy. That's part of like building your own life on a lie. Right, because the lies kind of snowball. Like you probably tell one lie, you got to keep that facade up, and then you got to pack another one on, and you got to cover a hole you left missing. and now you out killing people, right?
But the narc that's not the killer, because that is the extreme. But the everyday narc, you know what they're hiding? They're all hiding these things. They're hiding their addictions to street and prescription drugs, addictions to pornography, and addictions to sex. That's what they're hiding. That's what they don't want you to see, because all of them have this addictive behavior. That's what they're hiding. And so they can only pretend to be this front person for so long, and then they break, and then, then they come back. They have to break and indulge and come back, and indulge and come back. And in between these relationships is when they're indulging in that other life. They have a whole hidden life. That's what they don't want you to see.
Bars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She took us deep. She took us deep, Frank. She took us around. So most of our content is kind of business, kind of. But we didn't get a chance to talk about.
Yeah.
But this is good for us. I told her we're doing our what is it? What's the Tyler Perry guy? He did this movie, his serious role, whatever that was. Right. This is our serious role. We perfecting our conversation craft. But anyhow, we didn't even talk about how you marketing the book and how you pushing the book and how you going around telling people, or like community, like how you even getting the word
the
out.
Message out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so I guess we can.
The first thing I did have a book launch event in Virginia Beach, and I brought in people from several states around the area. And I actually did it. I had like a poetry slam night. I had poetry, I had live singers, live music, and jazz and food, and it was a huge show. And people came out, and that's how I launched the book. But I did use a publisher, and so they did create all of my social media pages, like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and my YouTube channel. And the publisher did all of that for me. And then from there, I've been doing roundtable discussions. Some of them are live on Facebook. Some I do off of Facebook, so people can really talk about the things that they're going through. So those will only maybe be 20 or 25 people in a session, But what I really want to do is really connect with the HBCUs. So I've been talking with them so I can connect with their student counseling services, because I want to hit this at the ground level. Like I don't want people to get thrown from a cliff like I was. I don't want you to be 55 years old, like me, and figuring this stuff out. I want you to figure this stuff out when you're 20.
Get the warning signs, get the education about it. No, that's huge. That's huge. I want to ask you about the publisher. You said publisher because I have a book in the works. It's a work in progress.
Get a Frank.
Is you write, you stop, you write, you stop, you write, you stop. We could take this offline or whatever, but like they did all the socials and all that, or they published it for you and all that stuff, the hard copies.
Yes. So the thing I found out the hard way is that if you're a first-time author, then the big publishing houses and people say, "Oh, I'm gonna get a book deal." Well, that's like getting in the NFL. Okay. Some people are gonna make it, most are not. And so then they have the hybrid publishers. And so they work with you to do all of your technical stuff. And you're going to do all the writing, and you're going to work with them. And there is a fee for it. But what happens is once, let's say you pick a $2,000 package or, the $8,000 package, once your book goes on sale, once you recoup that $2,000 or that $5,000, whatever, then they start to take 15% and you get 85%. But up until that point, you're getting, your book sales, right? And so they put my book at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Google Play, iTunes, and Kindle. Now, I'm gonna tell you, Amazon will publish anything.
That's true.
Barnes & Noble is still the creme de la creme of books. So Barnes & Noble has a higher standard. So whatever you decide to do, make sure you're working towards the standard of Barnes & Noble, because then everything else is going to fall in there. But if you're just working to the standard of Amazon, Barnes & Noble doesn't take self-published books. If your book is not backed by a publisher, they won't take it. And the reason is because they put their name behind every book that they're selling. And if your books don't sell, the publisher has to tell them, we're going to buy the books back. Barnes & Noble, they don't take just self-published books unless you're like, I don't know, a well-known author. They won't do. Amazon would take it. You can make a pamphlet on Amazon. So that's just,
and that was the route I was thinking of going, because I didn't know no better. But so your publisher is Barnes & Noble. You went through them?
No, my publisher is Fulton Books.
Fulton,
and so Fulton Books is going to guarantee they guarantee Barnes and Noble, hey, this book is going to meet your standard and your criteria. And it was so many things I didn't know. Like I said, I wrote federal policy for 23 years, so I know how to write. I know nothing about publishing a book. And so it was so many things I didn't know, because as soon as I signed on with them, they said, oh, we registered your book at the Library of Congress. Well, shoot, I didn't know I was supposed to do that, and they take you through all these different stages with developing your cover and the technical. Let me tell you, when I first sent it and they sent it back to me and I had almost 500 edits, I thought I was going to die. Like, oh no, this is how it goes. Like, I'm like, what? I thought I was going to die, because I'm like, I have a degree in English lit, actually.
I just wrote
I'm
this.
the same. I'll be the same way, because it'd be like I'd want to say something a particular way, and then someone else would come behind and change the wording around and all that, and I'm like, but it don't feel like how I wrote it. You know what I mean?
No, they didn't change the wording. These were technical things. For instance, like my book, because it's nonfiction, I had to have footnotes, right? So now when I went to college, it was like 30 years ago. So I'm doing old timey footnotes and doing all this kind of, but they had to go back and they redid my footnotes, which means now I have to go back, and some of the periodicals and medical journals that I was referencing, I had to go back and pull that stuff to get a proper footnote. They were correcting footnotes, or even something as simple as, because my book is nonfiction and it's true, I had to remove any references that would make someone know who I'm talking about or who the ladies are talking about. So now I got to go through the whole book and take out any references. I wasn't using people's names, but even if I said that person's mother, now I have to say the family member, so it was all of these types of things, or even just to take out, a period and put a colon, or a colon and put a semicolon. Each edit counts. So now we're kind of going around and around. So they're taking me through the editing process. When I started out with like 500 edits, and now I'm down to 10 and 5 and 1. And okay, now we can move on to the next stage, the typesetting, the book cover. And so it was a long process. It took me 11 months to write the book. It took 14 months for the publisher to do everything they needed to do, put it in all these venues, to do all of my social media, to get all of, get it placed, to do my my press release. They released it. They did press release for radio and TV and everything. They had to do all of this stuff. So it was nerve-wracking, but it's probably needed, because by the time they finished, I was finished with my therapy, because I couldn't even talk about this stuff without coming like into a million pieces. So it really did, the creator is the best of planners, because had it come out earlier and people wanted me to get on and talk about it, I would have been like a hot mess. So I was trying, to recover and not be a hot mess, right? So but yeah, it's a long process. But when it comes to they're called hybrid publishers. They all have pretty much the same kind of deal.
Okay. I'm gonna definitely look into that.
You have to kind of shop around. They'll send you all the packages. And I chose them because the lady I spoke to, she and I started talking. She said, oh my God, this happened to my mother. Her husband, she got married. He took all of her retirement and disappeared. And so she and I had a connection. And that was but the rest of them, the contracts were all the same. But I just resonated and connected with the lady who was my publishing assistant that they assigned to me. But pretty much they're going to have packages. And so you can just get the editing, or you could just get it's a la carte. You can just, I just want my book cover done. I just want my editing done. But I said, you know what? I have a whole nother life and a job. I'm not a publisher. I just want you to do everything. I wrote the book. That was traumatic enough. I can't learn a whole new skill. It's a skill set.
That's huge. And I'm glad I learned about this. Because I was looking at Amazon. I was going to self-publish, but now that you broke it down and talked about the benefits, yeah, I might not look into Amazon. But I wasn't when I finished. I was going to get to that point and then do my research. But no, it sounds like a plan right there.
And people will tell you it's cheaper to do Amazon. Well, yeah, my grandfather used to say, "I'll pay you not to give me something free, because if it's free, it's no good anyway." So, but the thing is, you want it done right the first time. I was at a conference and a lady wrote a book. I was talking to her. It was very engaging, her story. I got the book. The book was wonderful, but guess what? I really found a mistake on every page. And it could be because of my profession, because I read 300-page documents for work. However, I saw the whole book was centered. It was 14 font. And, what I didn't know, every genre has a different font in the industry. So Barnes and Noble is looking for this. If it's romance, they have a different font they use for romance than they use for sci-fi and for fiction and for
Right.
nonfiction.
And they probably did the studies. The studies show that the books and the fonts sell in that category the most or something. That's why they use it. It's crazy.
Exactly. And she had no page numbers. There were no paragraphs. These are things that you could easily overlook because it's overwhelming to write a book.
It was all justified, straight down, no paragraphs.
It was all centered with no
Oh my God.
paragraphs and no page numbers. And when I pointed out there, she said, well, I might change. I said, well, you know, because she asked for my feedback. And I said, maybe
Yeah.
get an editor. But her story was so compelling that it was a, you know, it was kind of a travesty that now your book can't get to Barnes and Noble.
Right. And that would have bothered me because I'm a reader. I read books. You can't see there's like a whole bunch of stuff over there. That would have been an eyesore for me.
Mhm.
I'm just saying. Where's the paragraphs? Where's the sentences? Where's the indents?
And you know, they have it's not like you got to drop $5,000. They do it on a payment plan. So they space it out. So by the time you finish paying, your book is ready to go.
Nice.
So when you think about, I'm in an 11-month process of writing the book, and then I'm in another 14-month process, you know, of them going through all of the edits and doing all of my media and stuff. By the time they're finished, you know, it's, you know, you pay a deposit and then you pay a monthly. And so it's not that painful, but it's worth it. I would say it's worth it if you can't get a big publishing book deal. And by the way, from what I read, they take part of that money back. When they give you a deal, part of it is coming back to them.
It's like advanced music industry. They give you an advance.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's dope. That's great information. Thank you for that. Thank you for the book stuff. I definitely could use that. I mean, I would go with Amazon, but yeah, no, that inspired me to get. I'm not gonna say nothing. Can't be getting on my ass.
And Barnes and Noble does have a self-publishing thing for them. I didn't look into it, but I'm assuming it must meet the Barnes and Noble criteria. But it kind of takes you back to the fact that Barnes and Noble doesn't take self-published books. So I don't know if you use their self-publishing tool. Do they give you a waiver and they'll take your book? I don't know. But
I mean, they got it for a reason, so maybe there's particular caveats or things. All right. But yeah, we're gonna do the closeout question. Can you get the closeout question?
Yeah. So we asked you what's your figuring shit out moment earlier. We talked about that, right? So now we want to know what you're figuring out now moving forward. Like, what's something that you're intentionally trying to figure out now? Good questions.
Right now, I'm really trying to figure out how to, like I said, I want to work with HBCUs and with their counseling services. And so right now, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And I want to get away from, you know, the social media thing is good, but I kind of feel like a hamster in a wheel and I'm not getting traction because I want to get my book in mass to students, college students, you know, and so that's what I'm trying to figure out, how I can break into that counseling area for HBCUs and really make a bigger impact, you know, with students, with young people, because like I said, I don't want them to be like me and they're 55 figuring this stuff out. Like, I need people to get it before then.
Yeah, no, and that's huge.
Going to where the people are. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So, wow, that was a lot of stuff. I am going to look at people totally different now. Everyone I know, I'm looking at with a side eye. But no, it's definitely important information to have to know. I'm happily married, so we good here. I ain't got to worry about no crazy stuff. Okay, you don't got to worry about no crazy stuff.
Don't flip on her, Frank.
Nah, for what? No, we straight. Yeah, nah. Thank you so much for meeting with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We're gonna put this out I think not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So we'll let you know. We'll drop the links, send you the clips and things. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Figure Shit Out, episode 92. It's a wrap. We almost to 100. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna do this.
Nice.
It is what it is. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the other side.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.